I've always heard things come in threes. My grandma used to say that all the time. And as it goes, within a 2-day period in the last week, I heard 3 different stories that sounded almost exactly the same. Sometimes it's obvious when I need to cover a topic, just by the sheer number of people who are having the issue. I talked to 2 of my clients, and they're in their mid-20s. They're about 25 or 26 or so, and they're really just starting out on their professional career journey. And also because so many people know about my career-focused podcast and coaching business, people tell me stories about women that they know who could use my career coaching all the time. And I'm forever thankful for those referrals. So let me tell you about these ladies. Basically, they're having experiences this week where the weight of responsibility that they've gained momentarily was so heavy that they began to feel crushed under the weight of it and they didn't know what to do. So that's what I'm going to talk about in today's episode. Hi, I'm Tammy. The purpose of the Tammy Little Show is to give high achievers actionable content to propel themselves to senior leadership while living a balanced life. Women leading in corporations and large organizations who want to lead with authenticity at the senior executive level have found their community. So let me tell you about all these ladies. They are very intelligent and they have unbelievable work ethics. They're so interested in their career that they sought out career coaching, and they're already making nearly a 6-figure salary at such a young age. I tell you this to let you know that they are not lazy or weak. They are 100% pushing boundaries, and they're willing to take on more and more every day. They're going to be a force in this world. I can already tell. Heck, they already are. So both the 2 I'm coaching and the one that I heard about separately had experiences this week where the weight of responsibility that they had gained momentarily was so heavy that they began to feel crushed under the weight of it and they didn't know what to do. In one case, they'd been on a mission to gain this level of responsibility and they had achieved it. And then a time came when they needed to make a call, one that might impact the corporate revenue if it didn't pan out, and it felt very overwhelming. And in another case, due to the pandemic, the staffing at her corporate position had been reduced and it wasn't yet back to normal levels, even though it does seem that the customer expectation had risen back to pre-pandemic levels. And in that case, this young lady told my friend that she goes out to her car and she cries on breaks and she cries on her way home from work because she's so exhausted. She's hungry. They aren't giving her time for breaks at work to eat, and she's extremely stressed out. She wants to quit, but she cares about her coworkers, and she really believes that the company is trying to get the staffing back up to speed. And then the third young lady called me and asked for an ad hoc coaching session, and she was crying so hard when she called at the beginning because just simply the stress that she's under. She's an engineer and a project manager, and they had a deadline approaching and they were having technical issues, and as a lead for this project, she thought they might miss the deadline, and she was very anxious about having to inform her boss about this. So give me an amen if you can relate to what these ladies are going through. We've all been there. Inevitably, when you get into a position where you're growing and you're out of your comfort zone, you are going to have days like this. Things will go wrong, staffing issues add tons of workload to other people, and deadlines are definitely stressful, especially if you know that other parts of the company are depending on you meeting your portion of the effort. The more experience you have in these moments, you'll naturally find a way to manage yourself through them. And then the older you get, I think many times you kind of gain perspective. You kind of realize what is worth getting stressed out over and what isn't. And even if you've been in the workforce for many years, sometimes all that means is your problems are bigger and the impact that your decisions might have are more substantial. So this episode applies to you just as much. Okay, so we're going to discuss 10 different ways to manage your stress when you feel like you are under the weight of a lot of heavy responsibility. So the first thing is assess what you really believe about the situation and try to put it into perspective. If feeling overwhelmed at work is a pattern for you, then it's very likely that you're having limiting beliefs that are keeping you from moving forward. You might think that if you make a mistake, if you make a wrong call, or if something goes wrong with a customer, that you are going to be seen as incompetent, that you're going to be seen as not fit for leadership, or even that your job might be in jeopardy. Maybe leadership will start to question if you even bring enough value. If you truly believe these things when your leadership isn't thinking them at all, they aren't thinking about you at all. They aren't thinking that you are doing anything wrong. then you are actually wasting your valuable time that you could be taking action to fix whatever is wrong, to fix whatever is stressing you out in the first place. I know that these things seem real in the moment, but the more often that you can question your beliefs in this manner, the more often you'll be able to take action and move forward, and the less that these kinds of thoughts will ever even enter your mind. Your confidence in yourself will grow, and you'll feel more in control of your own work outcomes. Okay, so the second thing you can do when you're getting this kind of stress is just remember how important it is to plan. And then in many cases, in the case of all of these ladies, they actually did have a very strong plan that they were focused on, but then making sure that you are constraining your effort, which means don't try to do everything at once. Don't try to do 10 things. Just focus on what is literally the next important thing. If you have a really good plan, then even when it starts to go off track, often it's off track because something on the critical path has been delayed. So regroup and think to yourself, or talk to a colleague, get a whiteboard and kind of draw it out. What is going wrong? What is the actual problem here? And then decide the absolute most important thing you could do right now to get things back on track. Do you need somebody more senior in the chain of command to make a decision? Is there something you know that if this right here was done, that everything would go back to okay? Can you redistribute some of the workload to get that one thing back on track? These are some things you can think about. Focus and constraint are often the key simplification that you need to calm your mind. Just stop, take a breath, and think. What is the most important thing you could do right now? And then just do that. Let everything else wait. What is urgent and what is important are usually two different things. And as often as possible, work on the important thing. Just because there's a squeaky wheel in your ear and it sounds urgent doesn't mean that it needs grease right now. And unless that urgent thing is your boss, stick to the thing that will give you the biggest jump forward. Okay, the third thing you could do to reduce the stress and the weight of responsibility is to calm and clear your mind. Sometimes you're going to feel emotions start to get the best of you. And in these moments, you need to have a plan to cope, have a plan to manage your mind. If you can have a few minutes to yourself to take a break, to drink some water, to go on a walk and think and process, whatever, go grab lunch with or coffee with a friend and just talk it out. Like a couple of my clients did, call your coach if that's an option. The young lady with the understaffed corporation, she called her mom and she vented to her mom. That's awesome if you have that option. So just get your emotion out in a safe, non-judgmental way, which will help you process. And sometimes when you tell somebody else what's wrong, it doesn't seem as bad. Of course, you can use some of the methods that we've talked about in previous podcasts, such as short meditation, deep breathing exercises. There's applications like Headspace that really help you focus and clear your mind. And it's amazing how fast you can calm yourself down just by getting a cold glass of water and just doing some deep breathing. Okay. The fourth thing is you don't have to know everything. I think this is, especially when you're young or even in any position, you don't have to know everything. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in thinking that people expect us to literally know the right answer all the time. You don't have to hold the weight all alone. You don't have to have everything on only your shoulders. Especially to my clients who are struggling with these major decisions that they had to make this week, I reminded them of something I learned in the military, and it's the concept of accepting risk. The only person who can accept risk in the military sense is the commanding officer or the commander of a specific unit, like a strike group. And it's only as it pertains to their mission. So even a commanding officer can only accept the risk within the scope of his authority. So if something needs to be raised to a higher echelon, there's a process for that. And in this way, then the person who's 3 layers down the chain of command in a military unit, they can't accept risk. So a 25-year-old assistant project manager in a corporation shouldn't be able to accept all the risk for the corporation. So what does this mean? If there's something that needs to shift in priority or a decision that needs to be made that could fix a problem, but it might have a negative impact to the overall mission or the bottom line of a company or something, then it needs to be elevated to the person who can accept the risk if things go wrong. And in most cases, it's not that 25-year-old project manager. There's probably somebody in the larger enterprise that is responsible for that decision. And so it's so interesting that for 2 of these clients, the ones who were very young, that my advice to them was just to take a few minutes, get themselves together, get some water, take some deep breathing, relax, and then go back and simply talk to their boss and tell them they were now at a decision point. Here are the options. Here are the impacts. And here's what I recommend. And then let the next person in the chain of command make the decision. And if they came with a well prepared out thought process of different options and what could go wrong, then the next person above them would realize that they put a lot of thought into this and could help them make the right choice. But honestly, they both thought that they were just expected to know what to do. They were just expected to know exactly how to make the right choice so that everything would stay on track. They thought that if they didn't know what to do, that they were going to be fired. In both of these situations, I know for a fact these companies, it was not in the culture that was not the kind of culture that they were working in. And it had nothing to do with their direct supervisors. Their direct supervisors are really nice people. It's just what they thought in their head that this is what successful people do. Successful people know what they ought to do. They know the decision they should make. They don't have to ask for help. They just thought it was their job to make the right decision, and they knew there was a chance it could go wrong, but they thought if it went wrong, then it would be that their job would be in jeopardy, and it became very stressful for them. But as soon as I discussed with them how to professionally raise it to the next level, they were so relieved. And I talked to both of them after the fact, and in both cases, everything worked out just fine. They talked to their respective bosses and provided recommendations, which were accepted. And since they passed the risk decision up the chain of command at their corporation, then some of their own stress was relieved, and they were freshly energized, and they were able to move forward. Problem solved. Okay, so the fifth way to handle this responsibility is to remember the importance of perspective. One way for these ladies to have had less of an emotional reaction would be if they had just stopped for a moment to think about everything and to put it all into perspective, which is usually easier for a person who's older or has more experience or after living some amount of life. Then it's kind of clear what things will end the world and what things won't. And honestly, almost everything at work will not end the world. Well, I work for the U.S. Navy, so decisions that I make and things that my team does could have an end result in somebody living or dying. But I'd venture to say that this is not the direct case for a large percentage of corporate jobs. If you're doing your absolute best along with your colleagues and team, then most people are not even going to get fired when somebody makes a mistake. Of course, it depends on the mistake and the leadership in your corporation. And of course, you know what the company culture is at your organization. That different cultures certainly do have much more stressful situations than others. But just remember that just because something feels like it's going wrong doesn't mean that it is the end of the world. Okay, the sixth way to manage this is to, generally speaking, keep your slate clean. This goes along with the focus and constraint comment. It'll be easier to know what you should be working on to make the biggest difference if you're very deliberate about the projects that you agree to work on. This is not only at work, but all across your life. If you agree to lead the PTA, help your neighbor paint the fence, take your friend's dog to the vet, host a church party at your house, inevitably, that's going to cause you stress at work due to the commitments you've made outside the office, which is okay, but just make sure that that's what you've decided. And if your cubicle mate keeps asking you for help, so that she can learn how to do more complicated things with Excel, even though she could just Google it herself. Or if you keep volunteering for all the extra duties at work, including setting up the happy hour and everything else, if you're doing all of that, you're going to start feeling like you can't focus. So if you're finding that you're overwhelmed and you're very stressed at work and you want that to change, then take some time to decide if there's some things on your plate that you need to share with somebody else, or maybe just stop doing. Can you delegate some of your tasks to somebody else? If it isn't going to directly move you or the most important project that you're working on forward, then consider that you need to start saying no. Look at your home life. What are your priorities there? Same thing goes. If it's not one of your top 2 to 3 priorities at home, then let somebody else do it and ruthlessly say no to everything else. Okay, the 7th step to managing the weight of responsibility is to try to take a preventative approach. So when you're taking good care of yourself, you're sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night, you eat pretty healthy, you're staying hydrated, you exercise, you will feel it. You'll feel so much better. But when you're not and things start to go wrong, then you're less likely to manage the issues at the top of your game. If you're exhausted, if you're dehydrated, if you're hungry, all of this, that's when you're going to start having more of a temper. You're going to be more agitated. You're not going to be as pleasant. And this is kind of obvious, and it's 100% in your control. So if you frequently feel ultra emotional at work and out of control, then kind of check yourself and see if you've been neglecting yourself. Remember, life is a marathon. Don't burn yourself out before you're 30 years old. Okay, the 8th way to manage the weight of responsibility is to make a conscious effort to separate your self-worth from success and achievement. So if you think people only love you or that you only matter when everything's going right, when everything's going well, then you have work to do. It's exactly this mindset that will drive an overabundance of stress. Learn to have some grace with yourself and realize that you are worthy just because you're on this earth. You don't have to deliver a technical project to be finally deemed worthy. You already are. Sit with this reality. How do you feel about it? Do you believe that you're worthy? And if not, this is one thing that a great career coach can help you with. Speaking of career coaches, the ninth way to handle this kind of responsibility, and when the weight seems to be getting a little bit much, is to get a career coach. If you don't feel worthy, and if you can't get the overwhelming control, then finding a safe person to talk to who doesn't judge you and is only there to help you move forward will be one of the most invaluable things you can do. Mentors and friends can also help. Just talk to somebody who is outside the situation, and preferably somebody who knows how to move forward in positions of heavy responsibility as well. Okay, and the 10th and final tip that I have is pretty serious, and it is 100% in your control. So it's the most powerful tip I'm sharing in this episode today. When you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling worried, when you're feeling doubtful or confused in any situation, I want to tell you, it's a decision, and these are indulgent emotions. Overwhelm, worry, doubt, and confusion. These are the chocolate ice cream, the sugar of the emotional world. When you indulge in these emotions, you are deciding to stay where you are. You're deciding to remain stuck in place, to buffer, to hide from the actions that you know you need and want to take. The problem is, if you're doing something really hard, which, if you ask me, everything worth doing is usually hard, then sometimes it just feels a lot safer just to be overwhelmed or to be worried and to think, I don't know, I might make a mistake, so just stay confused about what you should do next. It feels a lot safer to let somebody else tell you what to do. But you can decide to change your mind. You can decide to think different thoughts. You can decide to start taking action instead of remaining in that confusion and overwhelm and doubt. In the moment, feelings like overwhelm, doubt, worry, confusion, they seem so important. And when you tell the story, you even feel very justified in feeling them. And many people would understand and be confused and overwhelmed about that situation too. But these exact feelings are the ones that keep you from taking the action you need to take, the action you want to take. These emotions and the thoughts that cause them are the progress-stealing excuses that will block your ability to amaze yourself. You can decide to go forward with leadership and make a decision. You can decide that even though you're overwhelmed, that you are taking the next step. The way to stop this indulgence is simply to go on a diet from these thoughts. No more. Don't allow these emotions to pretend to be necessary in your life anymore. It is time. Stop them. Just like you're going to say, no more chocolate for me, no more M&Ms, no more Skittles, no more vanilla lattes, no more whipped cream, all of that. Same thing with overwhelm, doubt, worry, confusion. No more. It's kind of like going on a low-carb diet. These emotions are out the window. Don't allow them to pretend to be necessary in your life anymore. Think of them like sweets in a candy store and just pass them by. Seriously, make a decision today. No more. They are a waste of your time. They're a waste of your precious energy. So from now on, you have these 10 steps, and I want you to accept that you chose to do a hard job because you are capable of it. You are a strong, powerful woman, and you are capable. Yes, sometimes that means that you're going to have bad days. Sometimes you're going to make a mistake. Sometimes it is going to feel so uncomfortable, and that's okay. Some days you are going to cry, and that's okay. Cry. Because you know what? Even if you stay in a safe, comfortable, quiet job, you're still going to have bad days, and you're going to cry there too. Life is a balance of good and bad emotion. So step forward into your most powerful self. You can do this. The more responsibility you accept, the easier it will get. That's how you become a woman who's ready for more, for bigger roles, for leading large teams and organizations. You take on a hard job and you are willing to feel the discomfort, and then learn to manage the stress, make decisions, and move forward. That, my dear, is how you will succeed. You can connect with us on Facebook at Genuine Driven Women, or to learn more about what we offer, check out genuinedrivenwomen.com.